Good morning and welcome to this National Housing Federation Together with Tenants webinar. I'm Peter Richmond, Chief Executive at Bourneville Village Trust, and today we've got one of a series of these webinars and looking at the voice and accountability. Joined by some great people this morning. We've got Christine Duggan, Director of Housing and Development at Connexus, along with Lorraine Teese and Charlie Alton, Customer Engagement Manager at Orbit, together with David Glover and John Bennett, Orbit Tenants. We've also got the support from Anna at the NHS and Becca, their events manager, so people to shout on if things go badly wrong for us all. Firstly, if this is your first webinar, there's a few things to look out for on the dashboard. So you can choose the panel. I'll just wait for the screen. The screen on here, you can see choosing the red arrow. You can see more of the speakers in the presentation, or if you've got any issues with sound, you can use those as well. You can also see that there's an opportunity to ask questions, so feel free to put your questions throughout the webinar. You can do this by using the question tab, and then we'll take questions at the end of each of the sessions. So make sure you put as many questions into the Q&A section as you can. We will keep to time, so we'll make sure we pick the questions that are most pertinent for that. So, okay, with that, I'm going to hand over to our first two speakers from Connexus to talk about voice and influence, and we'll take questions afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning, everyone. So my name's Christine Duggan, and I'm the Ops Director at Connexus, and I have with me Lorraine Teese, who is one of our very involved customers, and I'll be talking to Lorraine after I've just given a very short presentation on the approach that Connexus has taken to hearing the tenant voice and making sure that our customers really do influence the services that we provide. So just a little bit about Connexus, for those of you that don't know us. We are a housing group that operate throughout Shropshire and Herefordshire. We've got around 10,500 homes. We have 5 domestic abuse refugees. We have 2 young persons foyers, a number of independent living schemes, and we're about to change our names to Connexus Homes from the 1st of April, so you'll know us as that from that time. And for Connexus, I guess the journey together with Tenants was that we just took the view very early on that it was a really fantastic opportunity for us to restate our commitment to putting the customer first and for being accountable to customers. So we were an early adopter of the plan. We took part in the workshops to shape the plan and are now proud, obviously, to be an official adopter of the plan. And I think, like other speakers have reflected throughout the sessions that we've seen, it's really good to see that the Together with Tenants plan has positively influenced the Charter for Social Housing and the White Paper. And I think it's huge credit to the NAPFed and all the members, actually, that we were able to influence government in that way. So just in terms of our customer involvement model, I just wanted to give you a little bit of an overview, really, of how we've approached it. So we focused really hard as part of the Together with Tenants journey in simplifying our model to make sure that it's really clear to customers about how they can get involved with us, and it's really clear for our own colleagues to understand how customers are getting involved with us. So we have in place 3 easy to understand core themes, which you can see: check and challenge, community projects, and feedback. And the triangle really indicates the number of customers who get involved with us at those different stages. So we have a much smaller number that get involved with us at the check and challenge stage, a wider number that get involved with community projects, and then obviously a much wider number of customers that get involved with us in terms of feedback. And in each of those layers, when I talk about check and challenge, I'm talking about scrutiny, I'm talking about our complaint panel. So the last stage of our complaints process now includes a customer on the panel, and customers also scrutinise what we've done in terms of responding to complaints. We have a set of safety auditors in place. That's quite a new thing for us. So they're supporting our compliance team to ensure that we are adhering to all of our landlord compliance responsibilities, and how we can help customers to make sure that we comply to those responsibilities. And Lorraine is very much involved in that really high level, and you'll hear from Lorraine later. She'll tell us about her experience and how she's involved with us. On the community project side, we have activity days in the way that lots of organisations do. So activity days for families during the summer holidays, activity days and events for our older customers in the independent living schemes. Clearly that's been a real struggle this year. And so, you know, I know that our customers who are usually involved in those activities are really missing it, and we've been trying to replace it with a little more virtual work, but clearly that's difficult. And it's not the same as going down to Weston-super-Mare on the coach on a sunny August afternoon. But we also have a community development fund, which is one of the things that we have managed to keep going through the pandemic. And actually, it's one of the things that's been really well received in local communities. So that's a fund that we have where our community development panel will assess grant applications that come in, and you know, if they meet certain criteria, one of them obviously being they will benefit our customers, then we're able to give out quite significant sums of money, I'm pleased to say. And then I guess the largest amount of general feedback we get is through online and postal consultation exercises that we do, feedback and complaints, satisfaction surveys. We're really lucky at Connexus in that we've got an insight and change team who can be quite sophisticated in, I'm homeschooling at the moment, so apologies for that, quite sophisticated in their analysis of that kind of information. That really gives us a feel for what our customers in general terms are telling us. So each of these options comes with no specific commitment requirements from customers, and we're really clear about that. And since launching this simplified model at the beginning of January, we've had 50 new sign-ups to the more involved check and challenge type activities, which compared to the, I'm not sure, 15 I think we had previously at the most is a real positive for us. I mean, one of the things that we have launched that's made the biggest difference, I would say, and has enabled us to reach that wider and more diverse customer group, has been an online platform. It's something called Civic, and they've worked hard with us to really try and contact those people that traditionally wouldn't get involved with this, aren't interested in coming and sitting in a meeting, and want to be involved with us in that way. Just a really recent example, our consultation on our repairs policy, which obviously affects everyone that connects us. We've had an increase in take-up of almost 120% in response rate, which is just brilliant. So if I could just move on to the next slide. There is a really good video that we've put together, which we were hoping to show today, but technology beat us, around the online portal that we've been using. So if you go to connexusgroup.co.uk, you will be able to see that video. So I'd like to introduce Lorraine Teese now, so we can pause the presentation, if that's okay, Anna. Just give it a minute to pause. So this is Lorraine. So Lorraine, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself to everyone.
Hi, I'm Lorraine Teese, and I've been a tenant with Connexus for around 24 years, and I do get involved in quite a bit of the involvement panel.
Yeah, Lorraine, we've known each other for a long time, haven't we? And you are definitely one of our most involved customers. So it's really nice that you're able to join today and tell everyone about your experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, Christine.
Good.
Yeah, and the amount of time that I've been a tenant with Connexus, it has been an enjoyable journey, and one I hope to continue.
So just tell us a bit more, Lorraine, about why you got involved with us in the first place, because I think it can be quite challenging, can't it, for customers thinking of getting involved with an organisation.
Yeah, I was invited originally on what they called a gap panel, which was giving out grants to the community and to Connexus customers. So we would go to a meeting and decide as a panel, discuss the grant applications, whether they were approved or not approved. But unfortunately, as it comes with budgets, things had to be cut because of the rent decreases. And then I was invited to join the customer involvement panel, and I've been on there for a number of years now.
And how much influence do you think, as a customer, you have with being involved with us in the ways that you are?
I feel that the Connexus do listen. They don't always get it right the first time, but they listen, and to a customer, they listen to you as an individual. And we actually done a scrutiny on grounds maintenance, and as a result of that, across the two counties, as a result of that, we were we actually influenced them on making changes, which have been taken forward. And I've also really involved with the complaints, as I am at the moment. I'm having a meeting next week about a complaint that's come in, and they do listen to the complainant, and they take everything on board. I have, I'm really pleased with the way that the complaints are going.
That's really good to hear. That's right, because we don't, as you said, we don't always get it right. And so it's really pleasing to hear that you can see that we're trying, I guess, to get it right in those instances where we haven't, and we're listening to what people say.
Yeah, because I actually went through the complaints process myself, and at first I thought, well, it wasn't going to be resolved, and there's only so much Connexus do. There's only so much finances Connexus have got, and a customer expectation probably could be more than what Connexus can give, but thankfully, my complaint was dealt with, and quite speedy, and I was very pleased.
That's good to hear. Now we've as I said, we've kind of simplified our approach to involvement, and we've got those three tiers now. But is there anything you think we could do better to listen to customers? Because we develop those approaches in consultation with you and the other customers. But is there anything else that you think we need to do more of as a sector as well?
Really, nobody's perfect, and people do make mistakes, and there is going to be mistakes. Communication is a key, and I think that is something that needs to be across the board. But I do feel that they do listen to the customers. Every customer is an individual. We're not all the same across the board. And with 10,500 properties, it's a lot for Connexus, but they do listen, and they do let us challenge, when we feel we need to.
Great. So, you've been involved for a long time, and it's really good to hear your positive experience. So what do you get from being involved? And if there's customers watching today who would like to get involved and influence their landlord, what would you say?
Do it. You can make a difference. You challenge your landlord on scrutiny. You can hold them to account, and it's a sociability, a part of it. And if you've got time on your hands, do it, because you can give as much or as little time as you want.
Brilliant. Thanks, Lorraine. I hope that's been really helpful for everyone. I guess in summary, as I say, for Connexus, we found the Together with Tenants plan really helpful. We've found using the plan to really simplify our approach probably the most helpful thing, because that really has helped with our customers understanding what it is and how they can influence us. We have been able to increase the number of voices being heard by using innovative models. One thing I didn't say actually in the first part of my presentation was that we use social media an awful lot, as I imagine most people do now, to capture views and capture feedback and go back to customers, whether it's on an individual issue or whether it's a more global thing that we need to be thinking about the way that we deliver our services. And I think, you know, in today's era, that's increasingly important. And actually the pandemic has given us a real opportunity because it's made us have to go out a bit more using digital means rather than relying on really involved customers like Lorraine and to come in, which is just brilliant. But obviously we need to hear from more people as well. And I think that's one thing, Lorraine, you and the other customers were saying that you wanted more people to be involved with Connexus.
Yeah, and also I didn't say before, pre-COVID, we also run summer activities, and every I think it was Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday, we done events for the community, and then at the end of the summer, for 2 weeks, we took families on a coach trip. We went to Weston-super-Mare and we also went to Barry Island. And the customers really enjoyed it, because it's not possible to have done it this year. I have seen customers, oh, when's it going back to be done? And I said, well, obviously, you know, we can't do it at the moment, but fingers crossed, we may be able to go back to it next year.
Yeah, let's all hope. 21st of June, I think we're all looking forward to, aren't we? And it's not just an opportunity, it is an opportunity to take it, but also as part of that, we do talk to people, don't we, about how they can get involved with us. And I know we've had some families actually become involved customers as a result of those activities. So it's beneficial in all ways. So I think that was probably all we wanted to convey from Connexus. So over to any questions, Peter.
Thank you. That was perfectly timed. Just gives us some time. We've got questions that are coming in from you, so very well received presentation. If I take the first question that's come through, and I'll pose to both of you, and you can fight it out as to who's best placed to answer, and we can see where the accountability lies then, can't we? The first one really is how do you make sure you get the voice that you described to the board?
Do you want to talk about when you've been to board and committee, Lorraine?
Yeah. Actually, Peter, when we do a scrutiny, we have taken it to the board. We've done our presentation and they do listen, and they take all the information on board, and they go back to the service that we have actually scrutinised, and they will tell them that this needs change and that needs changing. And then we follow it up in 6 months' time to make sure the changes have happened.
Great. So there's a good sense of board overview and involvement that you've got.
Oh yeah, very much.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to say, in addition to that, on the kind of the wider feedback element, our customer services committee every 6 months have a general feedback and complaints report, so they can see the themes coming through. And we were in the process of recruiting a customer member to our customer services committee just as the pandemic hit. So that's something that we still have an ambition to do when we're able to.
Okay, thanks. There's one or two questions that are picking up, and you picked this up in your part of the presentation, Christine, about involving people who don't usually become involved, so perhaps younger people, excluded groups, and so on. So you've had some success in that, but how would you do that further? Christine, perhaps if you start, then Lorraine, if you come in.
Yeah, sure. So I think the key for us was finding avenues that people already use. So social media is so important in that regard, in that, you know, most people have social media accounts these days, and so, you know, we have a really good team that, you know, we've got a really good I guess marketing team. We do loads of stuff on socials, and we don't just do that to promote what we do. We do that as a tool to get people to respond to us. So that's been really important for hearing different types of voices. Clearly, not everyone has social. So in our older people schemes, for example, our independent living coordinators, when they were able to seek feedback from their scheme customers, and that gets fed back through to our insight and change team, who put it all together, so voices from all different media, and then present that back to us at board level, so that we can start to make changes in response to that.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. Lorraine, what would your perspective be?
I've just actually done a video which has gone out on Connexus Facebook page, which is to the customers, you know, encouraging them to get involved. You know, and it's not that you have to give all the time, you know, a maximum amount of time. It's little and often, or as much as you want. As for me, I like to do as much as I can, because I like to help the customers.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. But one of the other questions that has been asked, and I'll tie this together, one is specifically about antisocial behaviour and your response to that. But I'd also like to tie that into something you said, Lorraine, about that challenge of, you know, there are limited finances and so on. So the question's twofold. Perhaps what's the approach to antisocial behaviour? But what do you also do when you can't deliver everything that customers want? How do you handle that tricky situation of people's requirements set against what you're reasonably able to do? So a little bit on antisocial behaviour, but also about, there's a good example about, you know, how do you gauge what you are and aren't able to do as a landlord? Christine, do you want to start with that?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, in terms of ASB, I don't think we do anything probably differently to most organisations. You know, we're clear in our responses to antisocial behaviour reports, and we act in a really supportive way for the victim, but also sometimes for the perpetrator. So, you know, perpetrators sometimes are perpetrators of ASB because they have particular issues of their own. So we take quite a supportive approach to both victim and perpetrator. You know, if things get really bad, we've got an enforcement team that take people to court, but I don't think we do anything particularly groundbreaking. We do have a good, solid response to ASB, but I don't think it's anything that other landlords probably aren't doing. And I think, yeah, it's really important, isn't it, that when we're talking to customers, we're really honest and have adult conversations about what we can do as a landlord, whether that be because, you know, it's within our jurisdiction, but that's the wrong word, but, you know, within our sphere of influence, or whether it's because of the budget that we have. And having adult conversations with customers are generally really understanding. I mean, Lorraine, you've mentioned when you made a complaint, didn't you, because of something that happened after you moved into your property, and we had a conversation with you, and you know, you're a reasonable human being. I think most of our customers are.
As for the antisocial behaviour, we actually had a meeting last week with our enforcement officer, and he went into detail about antisocial behaviour, you know, what's going on. Yeah, and they do handle them well. I got to say that the gentleman that we spoke to, he does know what he's on about, and he was very informative. But as for the budget, you know, it's like every company, there is only so much budget you can do. And like Christine says, talk to the customer, you know, and maybe compromise, you know, and then people would be happy then.
Mm-hmm. No, thanks. That's really helpful. So some of the other questions are asking about how would you give advice to other housing associations perhaps to operate on a national geography? You've got a pretty big geography yourselves, but either a national geography or conversely, some are asking about from a rural perspective, I suppose, where there's a small number of homes, but again scattered around, which I guess is applicable to yourselves as well. So any thoughts on how you deal with that on a really big geographical spread? Lorraine, have you got any thoughts about how you see it operating?
To be honest, you know, we've only just got together really in the last 12 months to 2 years with Shropshire, and Shropshire is more rural than Herefordshire. So I think Christine might be the best one to answer this.
Okay, Christine?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, so we do have a fairly wide geography in terms of mileage. And yeah, the Connexus stock in Shropshire is very rural indeed. Herefordshire stock is mainly in the city. I think, but I think whatever size landlord you are, you will have people who are on the ground delivering services. So whether that be your repairs team or contractors, or whether that's your housing team, whether that's your supported housing team, there are always people with the local knowledge, and you really need to mobilise that group of people to engage with customers in a way that's going to enable customer voice to be heard back up. So, you know, one of the things that we do within our neighbourhood policy is have a neighbourhood plan. And so, you know, particular issues that are happening on estates are picked up by the housing officer and the repairs surveyor for that particular area, fed through to the plan. We look at funding, and if it's I don't know, better parking, enhanced lighting because of ASB issues, you know, those kind of things are picked up. And I don't think it matters what size of landlord you are, you will always have that local knowledge on the ground, and it's how you harness it, I think, is the most important thing.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. We've got lots of questions coming in. I'm trying to juggle between them, but just one final one before we move on to the next session. And just for everybody in the webinar, we will post the questions so you'll be able to see what's been asked and the sense of the discussion. But the final one, firstly to Lorraine, one of the questions has been, what would your advice be to a housing association that's decided not to sign up to Together for Tenants at the moment? What would you do to champion the cause?
Well, I think it's important to sign up to the Together with Tenants, because we actually were invited to go to Birmingham to one of your seminars, and it was really enjoyable, and it was very informative, and you got to meet so many different housing associations and the way they work, and everybody spoke to you, so it's really important.
Yeah, thanks. Christine, any final words from your perspective?
Well, I think from our perspective, it was a really useful framework for us to restate our commitment to customers. So, you know, we are all customer service organisations at the end of the day, and we need to make sure that we continue to review the way in which we listen to customers and we empower their voice. So I think for Connexus, it was just a really good opportunity, particularly because, you know, we only became an organisation 3.5 years ago. So as a merged organisation, it was just a really good opportunity, a really good framework for us to review what we were doing. And as a result of that review, using the framework, we've been able to put out the offer that we've currently got, and thankfully it's worked, and we've got more involved customers now.
Great. No, thanks. Really good comments to be made there. And thank you, Lorraine. Thank you, Christine. I think some really good stuff for us to hear and learn about. And Christine, Lorraine, particularly, I think your view about just the benefits of being involved, the changes you can make, I think is really important for us all to hear today. So really good message there. In traditional circumstances, I'd ask people to thank you in the usual way, but I suspect 300 people clapping silently won't be quite the same. So I'll just say thank you very much, and we'll move on to our next presentation. So thank you, Lorraine. Thank you, Christine. So we'll now move on to our next session on accountability with Charlie, David and John from Orbit. So I'll pass straight over to you.
Thanks, Peter. So today we're here to talk about generally our approach to Together with Tenants, mainly focusing on the accountability commitment. So I think it was really important, I'm just waiting for the slides to show up, it's really important for us to start this conversation really early. So we started this conversation initially at our Your Voice conference, and what we did was, it was a really useful exercise to ask our customers how they thought we were performing against all of the commitments. And I think it was a really open and honest conversation between the senior leaders. We had our board at the conference. Next slide, please, Anna. Thank you. We had our board at the conference, we had all of our engaged customers, and I think we can all share that we had plenty of evidence in place against the different commitments in the charter that we thought internally we were delivering, but actually the power was opening up that conversation with customers to see if that meant anything to them. And I think a lot of the feedback that we had was, although internally we might be compliant or think we are delivering these commitments to customers, but it is their voice and their on the ground experience that can really help us improve the customer experience overall. So we opened up that conversation and we realised very early that the perfect way for us to take it forward was to do a self-assessment with our customers against the commitments, to understand things that we were doing well and then our areas for us to improve that as well. Next slide, please. So the initial approach that we had is we asked our customers, our engaged customers, to form a steering group and to help us really define what our approach to Together with Tenants was. We didn't want to make any assumptions, we didn't want to make an internal approach. So we had a conversation and we set up a steering group. Now on the steering group was a number of different leadership team members all across the business, and their role on the steering group was to really sponsor the approach and unlock any doors that we found during the process. Very early on in those steering group conversations, we said that actually probably our leadership buy-in to customer engagement is where it needs to be. Customers feel that buy-in, but actually what we needed to do is translate Together with Tenants right down to those operational staff that are delivering the services on the ground. So as a result of that, we set up a number of different working groups against each of the commitments with those operational staff. And what they did is they worked together with our customers to understand what works well, what each commitment meant for Orbit, and where our biggest gaps were to improve that service. And what we did is also fed into our UK CSI data, just as a baseline measurement, so that we can start to revisit that on a yearly basis to see if any of the improvements we've identified and implemented are actually making a difference to all of our customers. So we did identify some of our biggest gaps, and we presented those gaps to our Customer and Communities Board yesterday. So I went along with both John and David and Bayati, who's not on this session, to talk about where our biggest gaps were and what we were going to do over the next year to try and address some of them. So there's that really clear board oversight and buy-in to the approach that we have taken. Next slide, please. So I just thought I'd hand over now really to John Bennett, who sat on the steering group and has been part of the working groups, to give his experience on what it's been like to work with us and to help shape our approach to Together with Tenants. So over to you, please, John.
Thanks, Charlie. I started to get involved in Together with Tenants very early on. I travelled to Sheffield to one of the planning meetings before the actual launch of the charter. And I've got to say, I was sceptical. At this meeting, there were 50 attendees, 45 of them were housing association staff and only 5 tenants. I very quickly made up my mind, when I knew Orbit were going to be an early adopter, that we have to approach Together with Tenants as a partnership. It cannot be only the housing association leading the way. They have to get tenants on board from day one and move forward together. It's all in the title, and that's been the driving force that we've developed to actually get this Together with Tenants project off the ground. The steering group that Charlie's mentioned has been invaluable. We have quarterly meetings with key directors with customer-facing responsibilities, and a full and frank exchange of views. And we identified that there was a gap in terms of accountability. It doesn't work having customer views reported second-hand or third-hand to the board. There has to be a clear communication channel. If customers want to thump the table and use profane language to make their point, that needs to be made directly to the board. You can't have the language and approach softened by second or third hand reporting. So yesterday's attendance at the community board meeting was a first and was very profitable and key to conveying the voices of customers and our customer feedback to the people who actually make the strategic decisions.
Thank you, John. That's amazing. So next, I just wanted to give you a quick flavour. Next slide, please. Just of what our strategic offer looks like and how we deliver customer engagement at Orbit. So there are 3 strands that we recognise in order to try and capture the whole voice of the customer in our properties, because we have got over 44,000 properties. So we're probably quite relative to some of the questions that come in earlier, and how do we capture all of those voices against such a wide demographical spread, geographical spread even. So one of the things we recognise is the need to have individual engagement in place. So opportunities for customers to be able to feedback directly on their experience, and that can be through our complaints, through our perception or our transactional surveys, and of course any social media conversations that we have. And it's really, really important that then we take those insights and improve based on what it's telling us. The second way that we deliver customer engagement at Orbit is locally. So that's giving customers a voice in their home, their neighbourhood and their community, which is often the most important thing to customers, and it's where they're going to see real changes being made. So we've got a number of different teams that support local engagement and deliver local engagement on the ground through our property managers, through independent living and our community investment teams. And then the third strand that we deliver customer engagement through is the strategic team that I look after. And that's providing customers with opportunities to influence our plans, our corporate strategies, our policies, and making sure that there is complete oversight and also a golden thread of engagement leading right the way up onto our board. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to give you a quick flavour of some of the things that we deliver. I'm not going to go through them all on the call with you now, but feel free to ask me any questions that you have. So we've introduced a couple of things over the last year. I think COVID presented us a really unique opportunity, and actually just this year we've increased our output by 160% in terms of the number of activities we've been able to deliver virtually. We've made sure that we are capturing those voices that aren't technologically enabled. There we go. And we provide them with support. We've provided them with laptops if they wanted it and training, but also we run conference calls as well. So we have been able to increase the output. We've piloted and we've tested all these different things virtually at the moment. Not saying that we won't deliver face-to-face engagement in the future, but actually there has been a unique opportunity. So it is here to stay in some form in the future. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to touch on the main things that we've put in place that we've worked with our customers to identify in order to be more accountable, as this is focusing on the accountability commitment. So we did over the last year introduce a scrutiny hackathon programme. We haven't delivered at the first hackathon yet. We're delivering it in May this year, and it's going to be on gas servicing appointments. But what we did is worked with customers and went out to a lot of the sector to understand how people were delivering scrutiny activities. I think we used to deliver it in 6-week task and finish type exercises, and we identified the need that actually in order for as many customers as possible to be able to scrutinise our service, we needed to make it as accessible as possible. So we shortened it down to a 1-day workshop. We've recognised the need of getting key people into that session. So for example, if it was on repairs, we'd have our contractors, we'd have our customers, we might even have other housing associations that's got the same problems, rather than us kind of reinventing the wheel within our own organisations. And then we are looking to do this on strategic problems, so things that come out of our Voice of the Customer report, so social media, complaints, our real-time feedback, but also we want to empower our frontline local engagement teams to start delivering this in local communities on localised problems as well. So we've introduced that, which hopefully will enable us to be more accountable to our customers. And we've stopped, though this might be a sensitive topic, customers having to present their recommendations to the board. They have got a really close relationship with our board and they have their voice heard, but we wanted to make sure that senior managers champion and value customer engagement and are therefore empowered to deliver the improvements themselves. So reducing that period down from what used to be quite a lengthy process to hopefully now a much shorter process. We have strengthened the relationship between our board and our customers. We have David, who's on the call, who's a tenant board member at the moment, and all of our tenant board members get involved in our activities all of the time to make sure they are capturing the voice of the customer on the board. We are looking to introduce succession planning for our strategic activities to identify those that are interested in sitting on the board in the future and making sure we have succession planning in place. We share our board minutes on our digital engagement platform and try and encourage conversation that way to make sure that we are engaging on the topics that go through to our board. And we've increased the transparency by getting our board signed up onto the platform and having those conversations with our customers. And then the last thing that I just wanted to quickly mention that's been a really quick and amazing win for us really is doing the self-assessment. So as part of the wider self-assessment we did on the when things go wrong commitment, we were really lucky that we just started to do that as the housing ombudsman released their new complaint handling code. So rather than again us, doing a self-assessment very internally focused about the complaints handling process, we've worked with our customers in the When Things Go Wrong working group and also recruited customers that had been through the complaint handling process in the last year to tell us what their feedback was, where we were going wrong, where we need to improve. And I think that was a really, really useful exercise with our complaints handling team and our customers to inform our new policy that's due to go live in April this year. Slide, please. So I will now hand over to David, who's our tenant board member. And David, can you just talk through really your experience of sitting on our board and the work that you've done together with tenants in driving this forward? Oh, sorry, David, you're on mute.
Did I do that? Right, that's better.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi. I have been involved with Orbit for over 10 years now, and I also, like John, got involved with the Together with Tenants setup fairly early on when we started with the Birmingham meetings. And it also just about coincided when I joined the board in September 2019 as a tenant board member, because it was at that time I felt that it was right to start getting more interaction with our board, and that's the way it went. I've then championed together with tenants throughout our customer and communities board for the last 12 months, and have taken a lot of the items that we've said to board meetings and fed them back to Charlie and the team on how they've worked. And that's when we set the working groups up. It was very good that we got together with all of our heads of service and directors to really get them to take this sponsorship of the commitments on, and really then we could take that out. What we did do, we come up with the idea that we were looking to increase the numbers and diverse customers that we want to push this out to. So we've used the Together with Tenants setup and the commitments and the self-assessment to really do that, so that we can then continue to get a better feedback on it. We've worked with our property management team, who are basically the feet on the ground, who look after all of our properties throughout the country, and they're going to start working, putting together local scrutiny projects, because we believe in local engagement as well as national and strategic engagement. So we want the local issues to be dealt with at local level. So the team will be supporting the local property managers and the local residents to look at things like scrutinising if there's problems with grounds maintenance or ASB at a local level, and then that will then hopefully cut out some of the problems with residents having to deal with our complaint system. So it's very much the accountability, but the board, as Charlie rightly said, we presented the assessment to the board yesterday, and it went down very, very well, and the board have been looking forward to it for the last 3 months to see how we've actually developed it. And going forward, it's got 100% board support across the business.
Thanks, David. So moving on to the next slide, and just to leave you with our next steps then really, what we want to do is to continue to take this forward. And one of the things we've recognised the need to do is to, of course, increase the number and diversity of customers that we engage with. I'm just waiting for this slide to pop up. Anna, have you skipped slide? Thank you. And the second one, to continue to strengthen the relationship between board and our customers. So that's introducing the succession planning, the coaching and the mentoring, and really making sure that we've got that golden thread of engagement right from an individual level through to the board itself. And then as the social housing white paper has been released, there is a massive focus on local engagement. So we as a team really, really want to support those local engagement teams to make sure they've got all the tools that they need to be able to facilitate and empower customers to have their voice heard in their local community, their homes and their neighbourhoods too. So thank you very much for listening to me and to David and John. I'll open it up to any questions, please, Peter.
Sorry. Thanks. And again, a really good and succinct presentation. Some interesting questions coming through from people as a consequence. What I'll take firstly, some of the questions have been really interesting, further information around the gap analysis and perhaps what are the targets and what you'd see as improvement thereafter. So again, perhaps if I start with Charlie and then David and John, if you want to jump in on that one as well.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, and it's really in its early phase at the minute, we've just started using the UK CSI index. So what we've done is been able to match each of the commitments in the Together with Tenants Charter with our UK CSI survey. So it gave us a baseline measurement. So what we can do and have been doing is obviously working with customers to understand from their perspective where we need to improve. But it gave us a baseline measurement that we can go back and review on an annual basis, see if those improvements that we put in place are actually affecting all of the customer experience.
Thanks. David or John, anything you'd want to add to that?
No, I think I'm that the annual review that we've put in place, I think we'll actually work on that, and we will work on the our own data and the UK CSI data and the feedbacks that we get through to the strategic avenue as well. Yeah,
no, thanks. John?
Just to say, we're proud of what we have in place, but looking at the CSI data shows we've still got an awful lot of work to do to make it even better. We're not standing still. We are taking it forward and developing it still further.
Yeah, no, thanks. There's also some questions, and this relates back to the previous presentation as well, about accessibility, ranging from perhaps people whose first language isn't English. You've touched on technology and all of those sort of things. You've got some I get a real sense from you that you've got some really good ways in which you're looking at all of this, but it'd be really helpful to hear more about how you make sure you've got that breadth and that reach for everybody to make sure everybody's influencing and the opportunity to be accountable. So John, this was something you spoke about particularly, so perhaps would you like to start?
By all means. From a customer point of view, it's the customer view that Orbit have in the last couple of years rather dropped the ball in terms of EDI policy. It went very quiet. Belatedly, they picked up the ball in the last 6-8 months, and we are going forward with EDI in its broadest sense leaps and bounds. There has been the visibility of EDI policy and the EDI team is right front and centre throughout everything Orbit is doing, both from the staff point of view and from the customer point of view as well. And we're addressing and targeting the gaps that we've identified. Customer engagement is a perfect example itself. We are very limited in terms of customers engaged from ethnic minorities. We are reaching out with the help of the EDI team to identify these people and actually make a personal approach to them, perhaps not to get them engaged in the traditional sense of the word, but to make sure that we're not missing things because their voice isn't being recognised. Just one example, the one engaged customer from a minority background made the point that in some cultures, raising your voice is purely natural. And she finds that when she's speaking to the call centre, this can really get the conversation off to a bad start because the customer is doing what comes naturally to them, but is misinterpreted by the call centre advisor. And it's obviously something that we need to look at and address from a cultural point of view, let alone from any other point of view.
Thanks. It's a really good point. David, is there anything you'd want to add to that?
Yeah, I agree with what John said about EDI. The board have had EDI training, so that was a big step. We've had a training session on EDI within our board. There is a requirement now to bring that down through the business with the team and then bring it down to customer engagement as well. And I know that's part of the plans that we want to do. And as John has rightly said, we do have this issue of not having a very broad spectrum of our tenants that are engaged with us on a 100% basis. They will come in and do things and then disappear. Our Your Voice platform, which is our tenant platform, has increased dramatically the number of people participating in that, and that has been probably a breath of fresh air. It's enabled people to do that. Yesterday we launched our new Customer Hub website, which will engage our customers. Will be able to interact with our Customer Hub a lot more proactively as well, and that will obviously be able to feed back into what we hope will be some more customers will get engaged with us by utilising that. But we are striving through Charlie and the engagement team to get more EDI and more diverse people working with us. I mean, we do send out, when letters do go out, they do go out with multicultural wording on them as well. So we do cover, and we can cover that across, because as like Charlie said, we're nearly 45,000 homes spread from Folkestone to Burton-on-Trent down into the Cotswolds. So it's a big spread of properties.
Yeah, no, thank you. And Charlie, I couldn't leave this subject without giving you the opportunity to add something as well.
Yeah, I think they covered it really well. We're not going to sit here and pretend that it's not a challenge. I think it's a challenge for the sector as a whole in how we ensure that underrepresented voices are absolutely heard. It is one of our key priorities. We've got 3 of them moving forward for the next year. We're really lucky that we have got an EDI forum, and we've got EDI allies across the business, and now a coordinator that we're working really closely with to understand what these barriers are and ensuring that we are building that into our customer engagement offer and opportunity.
No, that's great, thanks. And just one of the things here is a shout out to say, really good to hear that the scrutiny around the property management team, just a well done from one of the people in the webinar, so to pass that on. One or two of the other questions have been about the discussions you had about board membership and board representation. And one of the questions for yourself, Charlie, is why is a resident representative not allowed on the executive board? I'm not sure this is quite the position, but perhaps you'd like to take that first and then others pick that up as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It isn't something that we do at the moment, and it is a conversation that we've opened up. As I mentioned, the second priority that we have got over the coming year is to continue to strengthen the relationship between our engaged customers, our normal customers, and then also our board as well. So it definitely is something that I know our exec director is really, really keen to do. So we are absolutely going to be looking at that over the next year.
Yeah, no, thanks. And if I could broaden that question out, it's the issue of board membership is one that's run around the sector for many years. And I, in a previous job, worked for what was a tenant majority, resident majority board. In fact, I was appointed 20 years ago by residents who sat on a board. The world's moved on, both in terms of size, complexity of organisations. But John and David, what's your sense of where that should lie these days in terms of board representation or board accessibility? I'm minded by your comment, John, that you need to be able to stamp the table at the highest level and be as blunt at the highest level as you can. So what's your sense on all of that around board membership?
I think it's important to make the comment that in an organisation the size of Orbit, board membership is very much looking at strategic issues, which isn't every customer's cup of tea. It's one of the reasons why at the moment I haven't looked at board membership, because I want to be involved with the day-to-day sharp end around repairs and issues that matter to customers on the ground floor. There is certainly a place for customer involvement at the strategic level, but that comes with its own responsibilities and interests. And at this point in time, it's not something that I would look at, because I think I can offer more at the sharp end. But it does need to be addressed because it's all interconnected, and you have to have customer voices heard at the highest level.
No, thanks. David, what would your take on that be?
Well, we have 4 resident board members on our Customer and Communities Board anyway, all diverse, all with specialist expertise in areas that were brought in, and obviously when the board recruitment process goes out, it's like with any board you sit on, there are criteria that the board are looking to fill, whether it be a resident or an independent board member, and when you really go onto it, I mean, we've changed in the last 12 months because you're not really supposed to be the voice of the customer, but we've actually managed to get the senior management team have agreed that the voice of the customer now needs to be heard more at board level. And I think that's where, when John said we stamp a little bit harder on the floor, and that's what, when I joined the board, I've started stamping a bit harder on the floor, and making them understand that customer engagement now needs a higher voice. And we have a very good executive director that really champions customer engagement. So, you know, he's really backing the things that we want. So if there's anything that needs to go to board that isn't tabled, I will always ask Charlie, is there anything she wants saying? And you know, when we go to a board meeting, I will stamp my feet and say we need to put this on the table as well. And the next, would you believe it, it then goes onto the agenda. So you know, we do get listened to.
Yeah.
And as I say, we're all on a 3-year rotation, and we're allowed to serve maximum of 3 terms. So you know, the people will drop off, and then the recruitment process will kick in again.
Okay. No, thanks for that. And I think the sense is there is saying look far beyond the sort of blunt instrument of single representation. I think what you've demonstrated through your presentation is a far broader approach. We've run out of time, unfortunately, and I think we could go on with both parties to talk far more. I'd like to just finish again. Thank you, Charlie, John, and David. But the comment that I'll take away particularly, I think, is, John, as you said, this is about a partnership. The together with is the most important message in here, and that's a really important takeaway that I'll have from today. So once again, thank you. We will be sending everybody an email next week with the recording and the slides. And the final piece before we close is we're going to ask everybody if you could rate this webinar on there. And at that, I hope you've enjoyed everything. There's one final webinar on this session next week, which I hope you join. And I think I'm going to be switched off. So I'll say thank you very much to the panelists and thank you for everybody who's joined us this morning. Thank you.